Hi everybody, welcome back to ScottiesTech.Info. I'm Scotty, my co-host Cletus. Today's video is something a little bit different. I recently received a comment on an article that I wrote on my blog about Malwarebytes, specifically the upgrade to Malwarebytes 3 and how there are a couple little quirks, and someone asked in a comment and said, well, can I continue to use Windows Defender, also known as Microsoft Security Essentials in Windows 7? And I replied and I said, well, yeah, I still do. Malwarebytes is excellent at removing, it's a paid app for removing malware, especially like zero-day exploits and ransomware, and I swear by Malwarebytes. In fact, I've used it to remove ransomware from computers, and it's you can download a free version and do that, and it's very good. So, starting with version 3, they say, well, you don't really need another antivirus product right now, but Windows Defender comes built into Windows 8 and Windows 10. It's very lean, it's very mean, and it's not the greatest, but it works, it does its job. It removes, maybe various tests say it removes about 80% of viruses and stuff, which is pretty bad. But the question that was asked of me is, should I continue to use Windows Defender at the same time as Malwarebytes? So naturally I said yes, because having two levels of protection is obviously far better than having only one. And somebody, I guess, was having a bad day and posted and said, oh, blah, 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 you're all ignorant, Windows is horrible, Defender is awful, and blah, blah, blah. So, right. After reading this comment and replying to it, I realized I should probably make a video about online security, because I think there are many misconceptions about online security. So, okay, the short version is basically online security, it doesn't exist. It has never existed, and you are never safe online. Now, before you crap your pants and go, oh my God, the sky is falling, let me explain what I mean by that. So, right, the first thing is, if you have online accounts, you have passwords. And I'm going to put links to all these articles I've written down in the description, so you can read more about everything I'm going to talk about here. But this is kind of a video compilation of all these things that I've written about, that I've discovered over the years. Passwords. You have an online account, you have passwords. Most people use passwords like password 123, the name of their spouse, 555. Also, they use the same password for every single account. Now, I know many people who actually use very simple passwords and the same password for every account, including online banking. They've never been hacked, their accounts have never been logged into, nothing bad has ever happened. However, the number one way that a person can actually basically compromise you online is by guessing your password. And there are actually scripts and things that brute force attack your accounts. Basically trying the most commonly used passwords and stuff, and all this information is easily available online. So you can't talk about being secure or using a specific version of Windows, or no, don't use Windows, use Linux. The operating system is obviously not the only thing you need to be concerned about. When you're online, which is all the time these days, you have to have relatively strong passwords, and I've written an article about that. So that's the first thing. Even if you do use strong passwords, back in 2015, the Cheat on Your Spouse website, Ashley Madison, was hacked. And it was discovered that basically what they were doing is they were storing all their users' passwords in two different columns, and one of them used, I think it was an MD5 hash, and the other was using bcrypt. Now, this gets all complicated, but the only thing you really need to understand is that they were storing users' passwords in two different fields. One was relatively secure, and the other one was absolutely outdated and super weak. So they created the second column using bcrypt, which is much better and much more secure, but they never actually bothered to remove the first column that was not securely storing the passwords. So this is the next thing, is that even if you have great passwords, things are programmed by human beings, including operating systems and all online websites. And most programmers are, most techies in fact, are pretty much lazy. Sometimes they're pressed for time, and we're all human beings, so basically things tend to kind of suck most of the time. Even the biggest, most popular websites, things are not done well. They're done to make the boss happy and get them done as quickly as possible. And yeah, that means there are security holes, and there probably always will be. Speaking of online stuff, when you're online, you can be tracked. I wrote an article on browser fingerprinting. I wrote my own JavaScript-based browser fingerprinting. It's not an algorithm, but whatever you want to call it. It's a browser fingerprint thing. And I discovered that you can actually track very, very easily 1 in 8 billion users. So even if you block cookies, even if you have all this secure stuff, in fact, especially if you block cookies, that's a data point that you can use to make the browser fingerprint. Every computer has slightly different hardware. It draws things on the screen in a slightly different way, and you can look at all this stuff and you can put it together and you can write a very simple piece of code that you can put on any website, and no matter what security features or apps or stuff that the person is using, you can still actually uniquely identify them. And of course, if the person turns off JavaScript, well, half the internet, actually more like 80% of the internet stops working. I mean, Facebook is like 100% JavaScript based, right? So it's kind of hard to disable JavaScript these days. So yeah, you can be tracked very easily. And I mean, this is something that I came up with just by doing a little research. I wrote an article about it. I don't use it for anything, but I could if I wanted to. And it's extremely easy to do. So I'm not an evil person. I'm not wanting to track you, but I guarantee you that advertisers who say, no, we're not using browser fingerprints, they are. Alphabet soup agencies, they want to track you. They've got all kinds of interesting ways to track everything you do, and using private browsing mode doesn't help. You can be tracked all the time, no matter how many precautions you take, because there's always someone out there who knows more than you and is smarter than you, who will figure out a way to track you. I know it's possible because I've done it. So, fortunately, like I said, I don't use it. It was just a sort of a exercise in curiosity. So, passwords, crappy software, browser fingerprints, SSL. Oh, I just connect to websites using SSL or HTTPS, so my connection is encrypted. Right, there was actually a hack involving that. I think it was back in 2008. Blah, blah, blah. It gets all complicated, but there's a hashing algorithm used to generate certificates, which is kind of the basis of how websites do secure HTTPS connections. And there was a kind of a mathematical weakness in the hashing algorithms used to generate these certificates, and these guys got together and they basically generated a fake yet valid certificate that allowed them to impersonate whoever they wanted, so you could do a man-in-the-middle attack. So if you think you're connecting to your bank, they could actually do a man-in-the-middle attack where they insert themselves in the middle, and they could create a certificate that appeared perfectly valid, and that it appeared to be your bank, more or less, and they could sit in the middle of your transactions and blah, blah, blah. This was, again, kind of a proof of concept thing that they did. They didn't really use it for any nefarious purposes, but it just went to illustrate that even SSL or HTTPS is not as safe as we think. And actually, it turns out that the hashing algorithms that are used, that are the basis of SSL or HTTPS connections, these algorithms were actually created by the NSA. This is the NSA who, not so long ago, we all found out that they were spying on everybody and their dog, right? Yeah, they're the ones who actually create and promote these algorithms. And this is another problem. It makes perfect sense. If I'm an intelligence agency, what am I going to do? Well, I'm going to create these hashing algorithms, encryption, all this kind of stuff, and then I'm going to present it to everyone, and I'm going to say, this is what we use internally to secure all of our stuff from all those evil people out there, and we think all of you should use it, right? But what I actually just did is I created an algorithm that appears to be secure, but I know how to sort of laterally think and get around all the crazy mathematical computations you should have to do to crack it. Essentially, they build something that they know they can crack, and then they push it to everybody so that they can continue to spy on everyone. Yeah, if I were the NSA, that's exactly what I would do. That's pretty much it. So And then, of course, there were the revelations that the NSA is spying on everyone, and also the CIA, and probably pretty much every other intelligence agency around the world. So, yeah, so SSL not safe. Email. People think email is safe. Email is not even remotely close to being safe. It gets complicated, but basically your connection to the email server, it's HTTPS, that right there, not safe, as we've just established. But let's assume that it is mail being passed between various servers on the internet. As I mentioned in a previous video, and also in some articles, mail servers can't talk to each other if they're actually properly and securely configured, because everything has to be backwards compatible for all those other mail servers out there where people aren't really doing things right. So then you could say, well, but I use PGP encryption or something similar so that I encrypt my email before I ever connect to my mail server and shoot it out on the internet. But again, we come back to the fact that, say, alphabet soup agencies and other hackers and people who are up to no good, they break the encryption. And you think that they don't because you read these articles in the media where they say, yes, but it requires, roomfuls of supercomputers to mathematically crack the encryption, and that's not the point. The point is you don't throw roomfuls of supercomputers at it. It's based on a mathematical algorithm, so you get a bunch of smart people together to sit in a room and figure out, you think laterally, and you try to get around, you take a shortcut path. You don't go on this whole long line of computation. You take a shortcut path that gets you to your endpoint based on some mathematical weakness. And as I said, obviously it would be a piece of cake for the NSA to introduce these sorts of weaknesses in algorithms, hashing algorithms, for example, that they have actually designed. Right, so you email not as safe as people think, and even if all that being the case, in my old job, I worked for a telecommunications equipment manufacturer in the US, and they manufactured optical transport switches. So let's assume that everything I said is complete BS, right? Okay. The company I worked for, they made optical transport switches, and what these are is the entire internet and all your phone conversations, your cell phone instant messages, MMSs, all the surfing you do mobile, all the surfing you do via Wi-Fi or your Ethernet in your home, all of this data and voice traffic, all of it goes over optical fibers, fiber optic networks, and the nodes of these fiber optic networks are these optical transport switches, boxes. Fibers go in, fibers go out. It's a big box. It's essentially like a giant computer with a bunch of fiber optic cables and other stuff connected to it. And these boxes, when you design one of them, there are software requirements and this giant document. And part of the giant document is a special clause for a backdoor. This is actually something that's mandated by law, and we used to kind of jokingly refer to it as the FBI. Well, there were lots of fun names for it, but basically it was the FBI backdoor. And but don't worry, you need a warrant. The FBI or whoever would need a warrant in order to access this backdoor. And if you access it, you have complete and full access to all the data and voice and all the traffic running over this node on the global fiber optic network, which carries everything. The internet, phone conversations, mobile conversations, everything. Now I always thought it was kind of fun because, all of my coworkers thought like, oh yeah, but no, it's okay, you need a warrant. And I was thinking like, really seriously, do you really think that, these crazy, black budget and the CIA has this massive budget and they're doing all this crazy stuff. Do you really think that they're going to get a warrant to use it? And of course I was viewed as crazy. Since then, of course, we've had the revelations about NSA spying and CIA spying, and perhaps I don't look so crazy anymore, but, right. So yeah, even if you're perfectly secure online, and even assuming that email is secure and your passwords are secure, and the applications are written in such a way to store your password securely and all this other stuff, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter, because there are actually backdoors built into the inherent structure of the internet itself. And those backdoors are accessible by anyone who has the technical knowledge to do so. And yeah, so sure, online security. And then to top it all off, as I said in my other video about click farms, even when you're online, even if you're perfectly safe, most of the information you're getting online, there are people who pay for clicks and likes and promotion. So what you're reading online is often artificially inflated. So you think that like millions of people believe X, and in fact, no, that's actually come from somebody else who paid some, American or Chinese or whatever, some company to artificially promote their product, their idea, their candidate, whatever. So yeah, online security. Yeah, it kind of doesn't exist, and that isn't to say that you should freak out, because you just have to be aware of all this and take precautions. Like, obviously, don't download things from weird websites, and I'm not saying you should freak out. I don't freak out. I'm simply aware of it, and I carry on with my life, and I take extra precautions here and there. I know that everything I'm doing is probably being watched, and I'm not doing anything bad, so probably no one's really going to care. I still wish that I had more privacy, because I think privacy should be a right, and neither the CIA or NSA or anyone else's intelligence agency should be spying on everything I do simply because they feel like it. That's ridiculous. But yeah, well, there you have it. So the point is, it's complicated. And finally, if you think that using a particular version of Windows, or not using Windows and using Linux or perhaps a Mac is better, in certain ways it is. But I mean, even Linux, it's open source software, and the code is out there for everyone to look at. And as we saw from the Vault 7 revelations, all that information that was released, there are specific pieces of malware used by intelligence agencies specifically targeting, say, like iPhones or Macs or Linux, Android. It's nothing is safe. So my whole thing is, like, use what you want and simply be aware of the risks and what's going on out there, and take appropriate precautions. And yeah, then don't lose sleep over it, basically. So that's my little rant about online security doesn't exist. For more techie tips, see ScottiesTech.Info. Thanks for watching. See you next time.